She can kind of like be this enticing, enticing little thing, and she can be pure and noble. Hi, and welcome to my channel. Today you're in for a treat, as this is baby's first video essay. And as one of the greats said, it's probably a microcosm of all my flaws that I would choose sister wives as my first topic. But yet, here we are. My name is Lana, and I'm just a middle-aged mom with a master's degree I barely use, crooked teeth, a messy house, not much time to be doing this, and a dream. So, coming up in this video, I will be discussing cults and high control religions. I'll be discussing sister wives. I'll be discussing purity culture, and maybe some other things thrown in there along the way. I really hope you'll stick around and join me. And imagine that you're just like adored, like you are Taylor Swift at the Eras Tour, the crowd, knowing every one of your song lyrics and diving deep into your lore. You're Lady Gaga in 2009, at the Monsters Ball, or like you're Janet Jackson in 1994, at the height of her powers. You're just, you command attention of everyone around you. Fame, fortune, all of it. You have it in spades, and it feels amazing. Now, it is a little bit of an exaggeration, but this is what it feels like to be a good, pure teenage girl living in a cult. Like I said, my name's Lana, and I grew up in a cult. So it's not really the kind of cult you normally hear about on documentaries. This one doesn't have any fancy branding, unfortunately. This one was disguised as just your normal little small town church. It's a Pentecostal church. And if you're not familiar with Pentecostalism, it's a denomination of Christianity that's been around maybe since the early 1900s. One of the big features of Pentecostalism is the baptism in the Holy Spirit, which is speaking in tongues. So you also hear Pentecostals talking a lot about a personal relationship with Jesus versus just a stagnant religion. At least when I was in the denomination, we like to consider ourselves the real Christians, not like the Catholics who stoically fill their Sunday mornings with boring traditions, muttering the same words over and over, worshiping Mary or whatever they do. Not the Lutherans, who we like to call Catholic light. The Methodists, I don't know, are you kidding me? They don't even really have any defining features, and don't get me started on the Episcopalians, who I heard accept gay people. Now, there's also Baptists, which overall, that could sometimes be acceptable. They seem pretty charismatic. They have the same strict societal ideas and the same loose church services, characterized by screaming preacher and some toe-tapping music. But I've heard the Baptists believe once saved, always saved, and that is not for us Pentecostals. We like to put the good old true fear of God in you. We want you to know that you could be driving home from work, say a curse word at a passing vehicle that cuts you off, die in a fiery crash, and go straight to hell for that, even if you've been born again for years. Speaking of born again, that's another huge feature. We love the term born again or saved. We base our entire identity on when we were born again, which is very confusing when you're brought up in this religion. I was a 5-year-old crying at the altar, begging God to save me from what exactly I still really don't know. Stories of dramatic conversions were huge. I'm talking like big stuff. You were basically kind of a celebrity if you were someone who had lived, a worldly life, and then you were dramatically converted into Pentecostalism. But as children of those people who knew nothing else of the outside world, it was extremely confusing. We were constantly told in no uncertain terms that the world was not for us, but against us, and we were not of this world. We were a called and chosen people. So how are we supposed to have this glorious testimony that was so praised, yet not stray from being born into the chosen people, We're told by youth pastors and at our youth camps how amazing it was to be the person who doesn't need to have a big conversion, who has always known that they wanted to follow Jesus, be saved and born again from a young age. But the terms born again, saved, I mean, those all imply that you had a life you needed to turn from, a life that was not going well, and you needed God to rescue you. At 5 years old, I have no idea what I thought I needed to be rescued from. I mean, what we were told from the adults was that our hearts were inherently sinful and that any disobedience was proof of that. Anytime we disagreed with our parents, we questioned something an adult had said or the church had said, or anytime we even felt it inside of ourselves, being mad at our parents or mad at other adults or mad at the church, God knew all of those things. Those were all proof that we were disgusting, evil sinners. So we needed to be saved and rescued from basically birth because you're disgusting. You're a vile person inside. Yet, don't you dare take a step outside of what the church has deemed as acceptable behavior because, even though you're vile and wicked, you are supposed to be a people who are set apart. Just like this song we always sang that went, "For we are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people," blah, 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 something about being called into his marvelous light. But that verse is a good segue onto the topic I wanted to discuss. One thing I've discovered since leaving the cult is that every single high control religion tells their followers the same exact thing. Each group is a chosen people, a royal priesthood. The term priesthood is funny in that song because even though we sang that probably every Sunday, priest and priesthood were not words we would normally use. But I know from my ex-Mormon friends and from Mormon media I've consumed, like Sister Wives, they seem to love those terms. Men are able to have something they call the priesthood, which basically I think means that they're priest or the leader of their families spiritually, and they can give blessings and lead Bible studies and have spiritual authority. We did have that same concept in Pentecostalism. We just didn't call it by those terms. The man was most definitely the leader of the house, and usually also the men were pastors and speakers or deacons, although I will give it to Pentecostals that they were fine with women preaching from the pulpit. They were even fine with women being ordained. My own mom was actually ordained at one point. But when it came right down to it, you still needed to have a husband who was the spiritual head of the family. It's just in the Bible. Don't come for them. Eve was created out of Adam's rib, so sure, Eve can name some of the animals, and I'm sure she's got a lot of great ideas, but at the end of the day, she is the one who made the terrible decision and freaking roped Adam into it. So, women need someone to guide them ultimately. So this brings me to Sister Wives. Now, I've been watching Sister Wives off and on through the years, like a good elder millennial, baby Gen X, Xennial, whatever I am. We love a good guilty pleasure trash reality show. We have loved them since the late 90s with Survivor and Big Brother, then Paris Hilton, the K Family, all the housewives, yada, yada, yada. There's so many now that you can basically have your own niche of reality trash that you can enjoy at any time of the day. I think I found myself squarely in the TLC reality trash bag category, which I know is not saying much for me, but that's what it is. Sister Wives drew me in because of the high control religion aspect, which I'm obviously very familiar with. It's in my blood. I understand it like nothing else. It's always really fascinating for me. I just noticed my doggy. To watch other groups or families on these shows, also the Duggars or Plathville, who are documented over a long period of time. The kids inevitably grow up and the group can't stay as isolated, and the fame and the money of the reality show interferes. And so it's obviously super sad for the actual real human beings who, have to be the guinea pigs of this whole reality show ride that we're still on, but also a fascinating study in so many aspects of what it means to grow up in a high control religion, or to put it bluntly, a cult. So just like every other Sister Wives watcher, I've been watching these last few seasons because it has been crazy to see this very seemingly harmonious family who have been completely indoctrinated from birth, slowly come to terms with the actual reality of the world and their lives and do something about it. A lot of us who grew up indoctrinated will quietly, deconstruct our belief system at some point. I mean, I would argue that even my own parents and all of the other people who were dramatically saved into the Pentecostal religion were also deconstructing their own indoctrinated beliefs about the world and choosing something else. So it's fascinating to watch this happen to people like from the outside in real time, like, well, almost real time because, you know, they're like years behind still. Now, listen, I'm not a Robyn apologist by any means, but I do feel that there's a perspective missing from the discourse about the dynamics of this family. Again, I did not grow up Mormon, and I've never been a Mormon, so I've never even been to a Mormon service. So if I get things wrong, I'm giving you 100% permission to come for me in the comments. Always feel free to let me know if I'm missing something or getting it wrong, because, you know, I can relate to a lot of these things because of my experience growing up, but it's not going to be exactly the same. So I want anyone to know that I am always open to being corrected about anything. Please come for me. What I've personally observed through the years, in my opinion, is that Robyn genuinely is struggling with losing the other sister wives, but maybe not for the reasons that she says out loud or even that she thinks. We've watched her cry for years about the family falling apart, but it also seems like her actions wanted it to happen. I think most watchers can agree on those two things. So the way I started this video is like a little glimpse into the psyche of what it feels like to be born into a chosen people, aka a cult. Fully believe in what you're sold and fully commit to being the good girl all throughout your childhood and into your teen years. Now, once you become an older teenager, like 15, 16, in a lot of high control religions, including my own, you're seen basically as an adult. It is wildly common to get married at 18, 19, 20. I myself was married at 21, and like I was one of the later ones in my youth group to finally settle down. Now that I'm in my 40s, like I see how absolutely ridiculous that is. I mean, you're a baby. But in the cult, it is completely normal and praised and expected. So you're 15 or 16 and you have the brain of a child. I personally was so sheltered and naive that my friends and I were still watching VeggieTales and laughing at Larry's silly songs at those ages. Yet you have the body of a full-grown adult. If you've been a good girl your whole life and followed all the rules, been obedient to your parents and the rules of the church, then you are pure. This is the absolute best and most important thing by far you can be, especially as a girl or young woman. Once you're an actual fully grown woman, it gets a little more complicated. But like I said in the beginning, being pure, especially sexually pure, is everything. Not to mention, if you happen to be a conventionally attractive young woman who's also a good, pure girl, I mean, that is fame and fortune. That's Taylor, Lady Gaga, Beyonce, Janet at the height of their powers when everyone is starving for a piece of you. You have all the currency. You have everything. But you most likely have also been mentally stunted and emotionally neglected up until now. Like, the families are typically big. Authoritarian parenting is what is praised and expected. So your parents are not your friend. They are not going to be open to you coming to them with questions or ideas that you've had. For one thing, they probably don't have any time. Even if your family is not sister wives or Duggar sized, your parents are probably exhausted and broke because they're tithing a large amount of your already small family paycheck to the church. Because as my church, as well as Mormons from what I understand, and most high control religions, they require, or at least they strongly suggest, that you tithe at least 10% of your income. And if you really trust God to provide for you, or you really want a miracle in your life, or you really love God, you are going to give even more. So not to mention all the extra time that your family needs to be at church every week. I mean, you're helping out and attending services. You know, my church had 3 services every week, not to mention anything special that might be going on. And I know there are other churches that have even more, or they have, extra Bible studies or outreach programs. And all those things are fine in their own regard, but many parents stay so busy with all these things, and then they're broke from tithing and volunteering their extra time that they do not have the mental capacity to give a child the constant love and attention that they need. I personally did not even realize how much children need until I became a mother myself. And I worked with kids before I had kids. But watching my own kids grow up and seeing what an endless hole that they have for attention and love from their parents, It like really has hit home with me how emotionally neglected and stunted many of us who grew up this way are. I mean, we just didn't get our needs met in childhood. You know, I'm not saying this to bash anyone, and least of all my own parents, because I actually have a really good relationship with them still. But, you know, I'm just stating a fact. Like, it's a really big factor here in this story. So I'm speculating that Robyn, and I'm sure Mary and Christine's and maybe Xennial's also, families and upbringings was similar to that. I'm guessing from what I know about the show, and, you know, again, like, I do realize this is a show and I don't actually know these people. There's editing, there's all kinds of stuff. I do realize that. But from what we've seen, it seems like Robyn could have been that typical kind of good girl who had grown into like a pretty teenager, and she was pure and she was emotionally neglected. So this leaves a big giant hole to fill. I know from personal experience and countless journals that I can look back on that I was absolutely obsessed with the idea of finding the one. It was something that we talked about constantly in youth group. I mean, from the pulpit and even among our friends, the one was our one perfect soulmate who would absolutely complete us in every single way. This is what I and many of us pinned all of our hopes on. I mean, there wasn't a huge push for us to like figure out a career. Like, the world was scary and, you know, college would turn you liberal. And like, there wasn't an emphasis on figuring out yourself or things that you like to do. I mean, there was also the expectation that you would grow up and do what your parents did. And it didn't really matter what you did for a living as long as you were in church and tithing and involved. There wasn't any emphasis on figuring yourself out. It was on following God, following what the church says for you to do, staying pure, and then finding the one and starting a family. So once puberty hit, and, you know, many of my friends started dating. Not me, because reasons. I was an undiagnosed ADHD, possibly on the spectrum, had OCD tendencies and depression and anxiety that came with all of that, not knowing what's going on. And of course, I attributed all of this to like personal attacks from the devil. So, you know, I was dealing with a lot of things. But I saw it happen so many times where they start dating at like 15 or 16 with this giant void from parental emotional neglect. Again, I'm not bashing anyone here. I mean, none of us, and like, I literally mean none of us, nobody can parent perfectly. I mean, nobody can completely fulfill every single desire and need and whim that a child has through their formative years. Part of being a parent is also setting boundaries and saying no. So don't misunderstand that I'm trying to advocate for some kind of complete child dominance or, you know, surrender to every single whim a child has, because that also creates a monster. So that is not what I'm saying. But the mixture of an emotional void, constant talk of how the one will save all of your problems, solve all your problems, save you, and fulfill all your desires, and then 2 pubescent, hormonally charged kids with the sheltered brains of a child and the body of an adult, that is an intense combination. My speculation is that Robyn was one of those kids, and her first husband was her boyfriend. Admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about her first marriage. I'm sure there's more info that I could find from Reddit or Twitter or wherever the kids gossip these days, but I'm sure there's stuff that I'm missing. From what I understand, Robyn is very regretful of the way that that marriage began and the way that it ended. It sounds like she felt coerced into giving up her purity, which, remember, is everything. If I were smart, like right here, I would insert a clip of the episode where Robyn is giving the testimony at their home church service and she's crying. And
one girl, she took her purity and she gave it to someone who begged for it. And he begged for it and begged for it. So she gave it away. She gave away her purity. And he didn't respect it. He threw it on the ground. Because I was just in a weird spot, I started dating this kid, and I actually made a mistake, and I changed my standards.
Like, it's a little emotionally manipulative because it's pointed right at all their teenage children, and like, it's a lot. But anyways, I can't comment or even speculate really about what kind of coercion that she's talking about. I mean, it could be anything from the scenario that I already described of two really naive teenagers who think they're in love. And even though they know they shouldn't do anything physical, I mean, they justify it because they're going to get married soon and they love each other and they're probably soulmates, like that type of thing. But, you know, it could also be something more sinister. But either way, Robyn gave up her most valuable commodity. And I cannot overstate the importance of this. This is like being Jeff Bezos and losing your entire fortune. It's like being Britney and watching as the entire world turns on you for things they don't understand. It is devastating for people, especially if you were always the good girl. Then you feel incredibly devastated in yourself and in the situation. Because being the good girl growing up is like being royalty. I mean, adults constantly praise you. You're used as an example to other kids. You're given the attention you're craving for following every rule and doing it so kindly and sweetly. So here's Robyn. Now she's stripped of all of her value as a person in her mind, in the cult's eyes. There are no sensible adults around to say like, hey, listen, it's okay. Like, you're a kid. You're still trying to figure out this weird world that, you know, we all just randomly showed up in one day. Like, you've been here 15 years, girl. Like, that's like a second. Like, you don't know things. I mean, something as silly as like your body part being touched by another body part of someone else is not make you inherently unworthy as a person. You know, there's a lot of things that go into choosing a partner for your whole life. You know, being married is really hard. Being an adult is really hard. Like, here are some things that I've learned before you know, commit yourself to a lifelong sentence and also bring more human beings on this planet when none of us know what the hell we're doing. You know, instead of an adult just able to sort of talk a kid through something like that, there aren't adults like that in a high control religion. I mean, they don't talk like that. They don't even think like that to themselves. I mean, what they're going to think and say, well, first of all, I mean, they would probably not know because we're not telling adults things. We're doing things in secrecy and then living with absolute shame for the rest of our lives. But if they do find out, what they would say is like, oh my God, you've completely ruined your life. You've given away the very best present anyone could ever give that's meant for your one and only soulmate, and you're supposed to give it to them on your wedding night, and this is all that matters. Like, that is what matters. There's no nuance. It's very black and white. So the only way that you can even slightly redeem this situation is to get married to the person who now has your purity, even though, like, that's not a tangible thing that you can, like, give to somebody. But that's how this works. So, you know, like, growing up in youth group, I mean, we sat through so many different examples of what purity is, like metaphors. I mean, I heard the one where, you know, your purity is chewing gum, and like, who wants a disgusting old piece of chewed up chewing gum? Nobody wants that. And then, you know, there's one where your purity is a beautifully wrapped present, and, you know, if you date and sleep around, you know, each person ripping off the present and ripping, you know, by the time you're done, it's like little pieces of wrapping paper stuck to tape on this rotted old cardboard box, and that's what you have to give your perfect soulmate if you lose your purity before you find your soulmate and get married. I don't know. I heard all kinds of examples, like a rose with the petals, and I don't know. I think youth pastors get like a book full of metaphors for purity when they become a youth pastor or something, because there's a million of them. Okay, so I'm speculating that now Robyn gets married to this guy, and she just starts doing what she's supposed to do, which is to have kids, and, you know, that'll fix everything, I'm sure. I mean, this is not a unique story. Like, there are countless people from so many different high control religions who have this same story. So, like, this is not to shame Robyn. I mean, she's a product of this system, and this is the way that these systems work. You feel amazing if you can follow every rule and, you know, every single tiny little expectation, but the reality is that nobody can follow every rule or meet every expectation. So when you inevitably mess up, your entire self-worth, everything about you is gone. And now you need to spend the rest of your life begging God, really begging the church and the community to forgive you and redeem you. So fast forward a couple of years and, life happens. And this is what happens for a huge percentage of these very normal, developmentally appropriate teenagers who are pushed into a lifelong commitment because of their religion or, high control group. I mean, life happens and they have problems. Life sucks. Life is boring. Raising kids is really hard. Being an adult is not that much fun. I mean, you don't have a lot of money. You're, where is this blissful soulmate that you were promised? I mean, you probably missed him because you got tempted by an imposter. So it's not the system. It's not the religion. It's not God. It is this trickster spouse. He conned you into giving away your most precious commodity, and then he trapped you. So you know how to fix this. Now you know this dude isn't your real soulmate. That's why life sucks so much. Life doesn't suck because, there's a lot of factors in life. Life sucks because this isn't your real soulmate. So even though, high control religions almost universally totally despise marriage, but many of them do understand scenarios like this. And, especially when one of the spouses feel like they were tricked by the devil, like the one spouse wasn't a good girl and I was a good girl, but they were not a good boy. They were always trouble. And, the devil is the biggest liar and he makes things look so beautiful at first. So it's not your fault that you were tricked. So now you're a divorced former good girl who has children. So it's clear you're not pure anymore and, you're not pretending to be pure. I mean, that's kind of okay. It is okay now because you did what you were supposed to do. You got married, you started a family, and now you're kind of back to being the good girl because you left this trickster devil even though you had a family. I mean, you sort of bravely sacrificed your life with this person because you knew that they didn't love God as much as you. They did not want to follow God as much as you did. So it's okay for you to leave them. They're not as in love with God as you are. So it's very noble actually that you've divorced. And, now you have the next best thing, which is a testimony. And this is your new precious self-worth trophy. Your testimony will help so many young girls from being deceived like you were. Your testimony will also show people how good and kind that God is and our religion is because, God will take even this disgusting chewed up piece of gum and this ripped apart gift and he will make it sparkling and new again and ready for your true soulmate. That was the problem. So now at this juncture, I'm going to add in another ingredient into this whole mess. It's a secret, an extremely difficult but incredibly worthy secret way to live that God only calls a special few people to. Now, this secret is so dangerous that the devil has convinced the world that it's wrong. The devil has convinced religions it's wrong. The devil doesn't want people to know this real, true secret way to live because it will bring you joy and glory even after you die. It can be difficult at times to live this secret way, but not when you know that this is what God called you to. The secret way to live is going to be different in every high control religion. But in Robyn's case, in the Browns' case, this secret way to live is polygamy. So polygamy is the true way of God. This is the path of righteousness. This is the noble, God-fearing, God-loving, God-honoring way to live. And you have to be very special to be called to this. And even then, even if you're called to this, some don't heed the call and their lives still end up in misery. But Robyn is going to heed the call and she's going to be the prettiest girl at the party. She's the specialist one of all because she's going to be a shining example of God taking a disaster and turning it into a masterpiece. And if there is one thing that high control religions love, it is a redemption story, at least for a while. So at this point in Robyn's story, we all know what happens now, because this is the point when Cody and the other wives enter the picture and the show starts up. And so we know at least what the show has wanted us to see. We can see her actions and what she said throughout the years, and we can see that they don't exactly totally match up. I mean, she doesn't really appear to be somebody who like wants to be in a plural relationship necessarily. I mean, she doesn't seem like she's specifically like in love with, you know, Mary and Xennial and Christine, like maybe not necessarily, you know, romantically, but like even as like sisters and friends. It's not like, oh, she fell in love with them. And this is in my opinion, I don't think she seems like a person who necessarily wants that, but I do think that she is grieving the loss of all of this at the same time, because she was supposed to be part of this special group. She was supposed to be called to this special secret God way of living that would solve all of her problems. And she still fully drinks that Kool-Aid. And, you know, I mean, I'm not 100% sure about every detail of these beliefs, but I know that they believe that there's sort of like a higher heaven or like their own planet or something after death. You know, if you're a true polygamist and you lived that way, like you're in good after death. So what I've observed, in my opinion, my experience, is Robyn really enjoyed being the young, pretty, bubbly wife who, you know, Cody adored, and yet she's also so noble because she wants to share him. She wants God's secret special way, so she wants to choose this way with him, and she wants him to have a relationship with the other wives. And, you know, that's so kind and benevolent of her, because deep down she knows that he doesn't really have the same relationship with the other wives as he does with her. So she can kind of like be this enticing, you know, little thing, and she can be pure and noble all at the same time, which is like the true dream. I mean, come on. Now that the other wives have started to wake up out of their cult coma and, you know, they're leaving the family and doing their own thing, you know, I think Robyn truly is devastated. I think not because she necessarily loved, you know, Mary, Xennial, and Christine as people. It's because she is not special anymore. Now she has to face the reality of life. She has to face the questions about her religion, questions about God, questions about her relationship with her husband and how that whole thing works. I mean, she's not the redeemed good girl with a shining testimony. She's just like a sad, divorced, remarried, middle-aged, monogamous wife like the rest of all of America. So when you're raised being told that you're a special people, you're set apart, you're a royal priesthood, I mean, that is a tough pill to swallow, that you're not actually special. So yeah, she's crying in every episode, and she might continue to cry for the rest of her life if she doesn't face some of these questions head on. I mean, she is going to have to come to terms with the religion she was raised in and its own problems, the adults who raised her, their possible neglect or abuse, or spiritual neglect or abuse, and she'll have to come to terms with how she's raised her own kids, what she did in her first marriage that contributed to the mess that was, and, you know, the problems that came when she came into the Brown family and what it did to everybody. Again, I'm literally not saying that Robyn is some horrible person or like she made the family break up. I mean, I'm actually saying the opposite of that. I'm saying she's no one special, and life is really complicated. And being an adult is filled with so many gray areas and nuances that are not just easily solved by an ancient book or actually ancient collection of books. But, you know, that's a whole other subject that I won't get into right now. So, in conclusion, Robyn thought she was special. She did a normal kid thing, but felt like it was the mess up of the century and she would never recover from it. Then she did something that she thought was redeeming her and thought she was being more special by choosing God's special secret way. But now that has imploded, now she truly doesn't know who she is, what is going on, has so many questions. She doesn't really want to face those questions about her religion or God, or, you know, because that's really hard. I mean, that's life altering. I mean, it sucks to face those questions. I don't really wish that on anybody. I mean, ignorance is bliss. It's a lot easier to just to just believe things are black and white and just be happy. I mean, you know, so I'm not saying I wish that on her, but I do think at this point, if she doesn't confront that like, she's not going to be able to get over the wives leaving, because it's not about each individual wife or like her friendship with them. It's about that she was part of this special secret thing.
Hi, this is Editing Lana here, and I just wanted to add a little bit of audio because I kind of went off on a big long tangent about how this was my first video and blah, 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 and it was just really boring. So basically, I just wanted to say that, yeah, this is my first foray into this thing, and, you know, this probably isn't the most well-done video, but I'm hoping to get better, and that's really it.
So thank you so much for being here. If you are listening to this part of it at the end, thank you so much. And I really, really hope that I will see you in the next one. Bye. Aww.